Hello and welcome to today's lesson. Thanks for joining me. My name is Wes. This is Interactive English, which is the place you want to be if you are trying to practice and improve your English skills. And today I have a very, very useful lesson for you because I'm going to talk about something that everybody uses, and I'm sure that you use as well, and that is 10 useful tips to become a better writer. I'm going to talk to you about different things, different tips, different things that you can do in order to improve your writing skills. That's what we're going to discuss today. And throughout the lesson, I'm going to be asking you guys some questions. So if you're joining me in the chat, I want you to write your name, tell me where you're joining me from. Also, even if you're watching this later, I want you to write your name, tell me where you're from, and actually practice writing throughout this lesson. That is what I want from all of you, is to use your writing skills. And this is perfectly possible because you have the chat, you have that comment section, and I want you to think of it like this is your piece of paper. You can now use this to interact and practice your writing skills. So, hello, Musa, Yulisa, Lata, Asma, thank you so much for joining me, and everyone out there, thanks for being here. So, the reason why I wanted to talk to you about writing is because it's such a useful skill because we use it all the time. We use it in business, we use it at school, we use it just writing text messages or emails. So it's so important that we learn to not only how to write, but also that we improve our skills, that we're constantly getting better. Now, there are a couple things that make it difficult to improve our writing. First, I would say is that it's often one of the last skills that we learn. So if you're learning a language, whether you are an adult or whether you're a child, most people are exposed to listening first, and they'll listen to words. They maybe read them. That's the first time they see stuff, and then they'll try to maybe speak and use the language. Oftentimes, writing is one of the last skills that people try to learn and improve. So that's what makes it a little more difficult. The other thing that makes writing difficult is that it is very much rule based. It's in speaking. You can make mistakes, you can break the rules, and it's a lot easier to get away with. Not as many people are going to call you out on it, but in writing, if you are writing an essay or a business email and you see writing mistakes, it stands out a lot more. And with writing, we really need to follow the rules a bit more, but even if you're not following them, I think it's very important to be aware of what the rules are. So you know, like, okay, which rules you can maybe bend a little bit and which ones you really need to follow. And the other reason I would say is that writing really complements all of these other language skills. And the example that I would give you that it complements these other skills is that it's a reflective process. When you're writing, you're thinking about what you're trying to say. And I would help students prepare for their IELTS exam, and I would help them prepare for the speaking part of it. And one thing that I would get them to do to help improve their speaking was to tell them to write about it. So I would know which question that I want to give them. And I would tell them, I give them about maybe 5 minutes and be like, okay, here's the question, write down your answer. And they would actually get a little time to think and reflect about what they want to say, the words that they want to use, how they want to say it correctly. And then they would put the paper away, and then we'd have a conversation. But because they've written it, they were a bit more prepared to talk about it. So writing is definitely connected with speaking and all the other language skills. So it is really important. Now, the first thing that I want you guys to do and answer this question is that in the chat, in the comments, I want you to complete this sentence right here. I want you to tell me, improving my writing will help me What is improving your writing going to help you do? I want you to think about that right now and reflect on that and write it in the chat. Write a full sentence. And again, if you're watching this later, write this in the comments, all right? Tell us, improving my writing will help me what? What is it going to help you do? What is it going to help you accomplish? Now, there are so many different reasons that writing is going to benefit you. And you could say, it can improve your school. It can improve your schoolwork. You need to improve your writing because of school. Maybe you need to improve your writing because of an English exam like the IELTS or the TOEFL. Perhaps you want to improve your writing because you are getting ready to do some job applications, or you're putting together a cover letter or a CV, resume, and you really need to have your writing perfect for these reasons. Maybe it's just a professional work environment and you're writing different emails, or you're sending text messages, or even on a lighter note, maybe you're just writing a love letter to somebody and you want to express your feelings about this person. There are just so many different reasons why you might want to improve your writing. And as people are writing this, I want you to read about it. What are other people saying in the chat? What were their reasons? So, for example, Radwan, improving my writing will immensely help me boost my career progression. Perfect. You're learning it for a job. Improving my writing will help me pass my exam. Valentina, thanks for sharing with us. So these are all great reasons why you want to improve your writing. So now let's talk about how we're going to do that. So the first tip that I have for you, and I know this one is going to be a little difficult, is avoid reductions, okay? And what I mean by reductions, an example would be like going to, and people will say gonna, but oftentimes people will end up writing gonna, Gonna, and writing it as a reduction. And what I would suggest for you is to avoid using reductions. And I know it's difficult because, like I said, you see it all the time. And if you're in the chat right now, I want you to write an example. Write an example of a reduction. Can you think of one? I gave you an example, going to gonna. All right. This is something that in spoken English and pretty much any spoken language, we tend to reduce words and phrases to make it easier to pronounce and say, and these are reductions. The issue is because you see it a lot in like text messages or just informal emails to a friend, or even you see it more nowadays in subtitles too. If you're watching a TV show or even a YouTube video and using the subtitles, you might see reductions being used. And the reason I tell you to avoid it as a teacher is because there's really no benefit that you get for using a reduction in your writing. However, there can be some consequences and some negative things to using reductions in your writing. And that is when you are trying to write in a more formal context. If you're writing an essay for school, if you're writing a business email, you really need to avoid those reductions because it's not going to help you achieve what you want to. For example, when I was working in the school administration for my old school, I would do a lot of the hiring. And if I received an email from an applicant that said something like, "I love your company, I want to work for you," and they spelled wanna, W-A-N-N-A, the first thing I would do is hit OK, delete. This person, no, it is not for us. That's, it's just not professional to use. So I would say it is best to avoid them altogether. My next tip number 2 is this: be mindful of punctuation. You should understand how to use different punctuation marks and when to use them. The reason you need to be mindful of punctuation is because punctuation really helps control the rhythm and the flow of your writing. It really shows what you're trying to say. because without punctuation, there can be some issues. And let me give you an example. I want you to look at these two sentences right here, okay? You have let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma. The only difference with these two sentences is the use of a comma. But the meaning is completely different, because if we say let's eat grandma without a comma, you're talking about eating your grandmother. I don't think anybody wants to eat their grandmother. In the next sentence, let's eat, comma, grandma, then you're asking your grandmother, you're saying, hey, grandma, let's eat. Let's have some food together, okay? So the comma in that case makes all the difference in the world. If you're not using the correct punctuation, it can make your thoughts, it can make your ideas very, very confusing. So try to be mindful of your punctuation. The next tip, number 3, is to use transition words to connect or separate your ideas. And when I say transition words, there are so many different transition words out there. And this is just something, again, you just need to build your vocabulary, learn these words, and learn how to use these words. So, for example, if you're writing something and you have an idea and you want to add more information to that idea, you can use words like furthermore or in addition or also. And that's basically telling the reader, the person who's reading your writing, okay, there's more information that this person is trying to give me. There's more information that they're trying to tell us. Perhaps you are writing something about an event and you want to use sequencing, those transition words, in order to tell the story about how things happen first, how they happen next, then after that. We can use those transition words to really connect or help separate ideas, so we know it just becomes more clear what the person is trying to say. It is very important, and to become a better writer, to use transition words. Very useful. The next tip I have for you is get rid of just non-specific words. These are words that you don't need to use, that are not very important. Now, what I mean by non-specific would be a word like thing, okay? If somebody writes thing, I don't know what they're talking about. And I would say like thing or something. Instead of writing it, tell me what the thing is. Tell me what something is. Be more specific. You can also use it with, avoid using adverbs like very. This is something that I think in your writing, if you were to read people's writing, you see this a lot. I would read students' writing and I would find the word very, 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 very. They want to use it. It's an adverb of degree, and they want to use it, to show like, ooh, okay, it's not just fast, it's very fast. And it's one of those words that gets way overused. And I would say, again, try to get rid of it. It's a non-specific word. Instead, try to use a more descriptive noun or adjective in order to describe it. So instead of saying very fast, say rapid. Or if you want to use the word fast and you're like, well, I really want to express just how fast, find a different adverb instead of very. Instead of very fast, say unbelievably fast. There are other ways to go about it and not use those non-specific words like thing or very, because this is the difference. If you're getting rid of these non-specific words, this is the difference between telling a good story and telling a great story. It's the difference between writing a good essay and writing an incredible essay. Get rid of those non-specific words. Tip number 5 is know how to use numbers. Know how to use your numbers. And these are kind of stylistic rules, because I would say that a general rule that I would follow is that if it's numbers 1 to 9, I'm going to spell those numbers. If it's greater than 10, I often write those out. Now, there are many people that disagree with that, and that's fine, but that's just a general rule of thumb that I tend to follow. Now, what I want you guys to do, and I want you to write about and tell us in the chat or in the comments, is what is your favorite number? I want you to tell me, what is your favorite number? Write it down, and I want to see how you're writing it. Are you spelling it, or are you using the numeral? Now, let me tell you what some of the other professionals say. So when it comes, this is just a general rule of thumb according to the MLA stylistic guidelines. And MLA, for those of you who don't know, it stands for Modern Language Association. And these are guidelines that people follow for their writing. If they're writing publishing papers, if they're writing essays or a thesis for school, or even if they're writing books or articles for magazines. For more professional writing, these are the guidelines that they follow. So what they say is the first rule for MLA is spell out numbers written in 1 or 2 words, such as 2 or 300. So if you have a word that's written simply, that it's just 1 or 2 words, 1, 2, 13, 10, 400, 500, you can just spell out those words because it's easy to read and people to put that number in their head. Now, they also say that you should use numerals, actually write the number for large numbers that do not allow for a smooth combination of numbers and words, such as 151. This is a number that you would just write instead of spelling out the number. These are the guidelines that they set forth. So again, it's important when you're using your writing to know what some of those rules are so you can write them correctly. Now, I want to remind everybody that if you are writing a number at the beginning of a sentence, always spell out the number. Do not write it doesn't matter which number. Always spell the number at the beginning of a sentence. This is something I would see from time to time in different papers. Always spell out the number at the beginning of a sentence. And most importantly, I would tell people, again, be consistent in your writing, because oftentimes you're writing numbers and you have to write many different numbers. You want to be consistent between whether you're writing the number or whether you're spelling them. That's just something to keep in mind. So thank you guys for sharing. Andrea, favorite numbers. Andrea, 5. Akarid, 4. Alessandro, 12. Excellent. 12 is also my favorite number because I was born on the 12th, the November 12th. That's my favorite number too. So the next rule that I have for you is this, and that is to avoid redundancies. And when I say redundancies, what that means is avoid information or words that are not necessary. And maybe it's not necessary because you've already said it. So for example, I'd say, watch out, watch out, watch out. I don't need to keep writing watch out. I've already said it once. You need to say something different. And this is something that I think everybody does. We do this in writing, we do it in speaking, that you tend to say the same thing over and over again. And I do this too. When I'm writing something and I notice that, in one sentence I used this word, and then I used it again in the next sentence, and I'm thinking, okay, wait, that's redundant. And then I'll look at it and think, okay, I'm going to change one of these and use a synonym instead. And as I said, I do this all the time. I do this in speaking as well. At one point, I was living in California, and I got caught up saying, every time before I said a sentence. I'd be like, I really love going to the beach. I just find it very relaxing. What are you doing later? And somebody told me, they said, you really say a lot. And I thought about it, and I was like, oh yes, I got in the habit of just using it again and again and again, and it became redundant, and you just need to be careful of it, especially in your writing, because if you can get rid of redundancies and use different words and only, not repeat information, it makes the writing so much more clear and so much more concise. It's very important. The next tip that I have for you is so important. This is one of the most important things that you can do to improve your writing, and that is read. Read, 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 and read some more. This is so important. And it's something that's so simple because all of us, we can read. We read every day. But my question to you right now in the comments, I want you to tell me, okay, what is the last book that you read? I want you to tell me what's the last book that you actually read, okay? Now, the reason I'm asking you this is because I tell people to read, and I feel like most of us probably think, oh yeah, I get plenty of reading because of technology nowadays, because we're using the internet. And they think like, for me, I read every day, but I don't really read because I don't read as many books as I would like to. I don't sit down and take time and say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour reading this story, or I'm going to spend an hour reading this book. I think most of our reading is done quickly, and we read articles online and we read a few paragraphs, and instead of reading for a longer period of time, we end up reading for a short period of time, and maybe we just read more often. And what I would stress to you is I think it's so much more important to read. Try to read for those longer periods of time. And I know it's difficult. We all have busy days. You really have to make time to do this. But it has so many benefits when it comes to your writing, because when you're reading, you are learning new words. You are seeing how these words are correctly used in different contexts. You're also learning sentence structures and seeing how to use the correct sentence structure. And also, as I mentioned before, you're seeing punctuation, and you're seeing how punctuation is used correctly. So when you're reading, even though you're not really thinking about that at the time, you're not thinking about punctuation, you are learning that information. And when you're learning that information, you can then turn around and use it in your writing, and it's going to help you. So I would really suggest to read as much as you can. Tip number 8 that I have for you guys is use a variety of sentence structures. Writing, think of it like an art form. You are telling a story, and you should use a variety of sentence structures to make your writing better. So for example, if you are just a beginner at English, when I say a simple structure, you could just use simple sentences. Write a sentence that's going to have a subject, a verb, and an object. It doesn't have to be a super long sentence. You can keep it simple. Use simple sentences. If you're an intermediate learner, then you could use simple and compound sentences. Use those conjunctions, and, or, but, so, to combine two sentences and make your writing a little longer. If you're an advanced learner, use simple sentences, compound, and complex sentences, and really vary your structure, because it's going to help you tell a better story. It's going to make your writing more interesting and capture the reader's attention. And that's what you want to do. When people are reading your writing, you want them to stay engaged. You want them to keep reading, and this is a good way to do it. And if you're worried about, well, how do I, again, practice using different sentence structures? Read. That is a great way to see how people are using different sentence structures, what punctuation they're using, and you can use that in turn when you're writing. It's going to reinforce the information that you already know. Tip number 9 is this: big words don't always make writing better. So I want to say that, first of all, it's true. Big words don't always make your writing better. However, I do think it's always great to learn new words. It's always great to practice new words. I would always encourage you, if you learn a new word, to try and practice it. What I would say is that for this, a lot of times people will write something and they're constantly going to the thesaurus to find a synonym and say, okay, instead of this word, I'm going to take that out and then use another word that I don't even know what it means because it said, well, this is a synonym. And they'll take these words that are common, that people know, and they'll try to replace them with these big words that are less common, but people might think, well, this is going to help me sound more academic. Especially in school, this is a lot of people end up doing this. And what I want to say is you need to be careful doing this because it doesn't make your writing better. Sometimes it can make it very confusing. And the example that I would give you is take the word unhappy. Everybody knows, okay, what unhappy means, not happy. And say you're writing a sentence like, I was unhappy the restaurant didn't have the meal I wanted. And you say, well, unhappy is just a boring word. I want to replace it with a more academic word, something that makes me sound a little more intelligent and smarter. And you look up and you find, oh, here's a synonym for unhappy, despondent. And you say, okay, I'm going to use despondent instead of unhappy. Even though despondent, it has a similar meaning, despondent means that you are really, really, really unhappy, that you are depressed, that you are not reacting to anything around you because you are so miserable and unhappy. So in this context that, the restaurant didn't have the meal you wanted, people don't get despondent from that. It would be using the word incorrectly. If somebody said, I was despondent, the restaurant didn't have the meal I wanted, I would read that and think, really? You were despondent? That's very extreme. So be careful about using big words, especially words that you're not familiar with in your writing. And what I want to do is use this moment to talk to you about a language learning theory. It's called the input hypothesis. And what the input hypothesis means is it's basically telling you that your input, your level of language right now, your ability, when it comes to reading, you should try to read, as they say, I+1, input +1. You should try to read one step beyond your current level. If you're a beginner, you shouldn't try to read an advanced story, all right? You should try to read just one step beyond because that's going to help you improve the most. And I would say that's what they say for your reading. When students tell me, well, what should I be reading right now? I would tell them, don't read something that's super easy. It's nothing's going to hurt, but try to read something that's just slightly beyond your current level. That is the best thing that you can do. And I would say with your writing as well, don't try to take your writing at an intermediate level and say, I'm going to write an advanced academic paper. Try to write just one step beyond your current level. That is what the input hypothesis is talking about, and that is what I would encourage all of you to try to do in your writing as well as your reading. Now, the next tip that I have for you, and this is probably, I think it's the most important. I've saved the best for last, and that tip is proofread. This is something that I think is greatly overlooked. And when I say proofread, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it means to read something again and look for mistakes. You need to proofread your writing. So if you're writing a paper, especially for school or business, once it's done, look back through it and try to check for mistakes. Did you make a punctuation mistake? Did you use a reduction and you shouldn't be using it because it's a professional writing assignment? Maybe you're using words more than once and you think, oh, okay, this is redundant. The way to improve your writing and find these mistakes that you're making is to proofread. And this is something I think it's overlooked. I think so many of us, we're busy with our lives and you just like, I can't take the time. I'm finished with my writing. I'm just going to submit it. I'm just going to hit enter and then it's gone, or send if it's an email, and then I don't have to think about it anymore. And if I make a mistake, I make a mistake. The best way to improve your writing is to proofread, because not only am I talking about, well, you need to change your mistakes, but it's helping you identify your mistakes. Because when you're proofreading your stuff, then you're if you find a mistake, you might see that you keep making the same mistake over and over again. And once you're able to identify your mistakes or the ones that you usually make, then the next time you're writing, that is the best way to correct those mistakes and begin writing correctly. So not only is it a great way to help you identify, to help you find mistakes and change them in your writing, it is the best way to help you identify what you're having trouble with in writing, and to know, okay, this is what I need to focus on. This is what I need to improve in order to become a better writer. And one thing I would be wondering, my question to you is, how many of you proofread your emails? You guys send emails all the time, and I'm not talking about in English. If you're writing an email in your native language, I want you to write in the chat or in the comments right now, just write proofread, which tells me that, okay, I proofread it, I read through it again. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, I think most of us don't really end up reading things again. We just write it, it's informal, and then we just hit send. And this is something that I need to do as well, that I have to try to remind myself, is that when I write something, look it through it again. One thing we do is we write, you guys write us a lot of comments, and we try to respond to every single comment and answer them. And because we're doing it so often, so many times a day, it's hard to go back and proofread the comments. Sometimes we're just writing it quickly. Okay, enter. And I'll catch mistakes. I'll catch mistakes when I'm writing comments, and I'll go back through. I'll try to change them. But I try to get into the habit of telling myself, okay, I've written a comment. It's only a few sentences. Go back and read it again and make sure that you didn't make any mistakes. So proofreading is so, so, so important when it comes to improving your writing. Now, what I want you guys to do is your homework assignment, okay? What I want you guys to do is, in the comments, I want you to tell me which of these tips do you think will most benefit you in your writing? Which of these tips is going to help you improve your writing? What do you think applies to you? Which tip is going to help you? I want you to write that in the comments. Let us know. Practice your writing. Those comments section, that's your piece of paper right there. We really, really, really want to hear from you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, you can, this is Interactive English. You can find us up here. Please join our social media classes. Write to us in the comments. We really, really love hearing from you guys. Thank you, Miguel, Andrea, Max, Iris, Patricia. I'll try to get some more names in here. Radwan, Kuyen, Valentina. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you found these tips useful, and that you can use these to practice and improve your writing skills, because it is so, 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 so important. And as always, please hit that like button if you enjoyed this lesson, if you like learning English with us, and share it with your friends, your classmates, your family members, anybody that you know who's trying to practice and improve their English skills. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. So long.